Hello Orchid friends, welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, staying healthy and staying safe. Today we're going to repot a couple orchids, and these orchids are called Yellow Pixie. They are super fragrant, but they're just grocery store phals. So we're gonna look at the third and fourth one. So there are a total of 6 in my collection, and the third and fourth, they are the middle batch. The second time that I came across Yellow Pixie. And then there is also another time where I bought another 2, so that will be the 5th and the 6th. But today, let's look at this one for now. So I soaked them because it will be easier for me to remove the medium. In fact, it's media because it's a mixture of bark chips and sphagnum moss. I wanted to repot these 2 orchids because, first of all, they were out of bloom, and it's been at least 2 years since I purchased them, so they really need to be repotted. And plus, they have a lot of area roots. It's a good sign, I'm not complaining, but it's just taking up a lot of space, and if I don't repot them back into the container, I'm just so afraid that I would damage the area roots as I do my daily, weekly care for them. And the container I'm going to be using are these 2 16-ounce transparent plastic cup. I use soldering iron to drill ventilation holes on the sides, but then also drainage holes at the bottom. The media that I'm going to use for these orchids, in fact all the orchids in this video, would be inorganic media, so it will be a mixture of manto clay and hydrocorn. Manto clay will be the smaller pebble, which you'll see later in the video, and then hydrocorn is the bigger pebble. Because I want to save the original container that these 2 orchids came with, so I will have to sacrifice some of the roots that have grown through the ventilation hole. And after I clean up the medium, I carefully position these area roots into the cup. Because they're already wet, so they are not as brittle or rigid, it's a lot easier to work with when they're wet. So as you rinse them, make sure you get the area roots really wet, and then just kind of use clockwise or counterclockwise and kind of twist as you push them down. Obviously you may still have to use your finger or use chopsticks or whatever tool to kind of adjust the roots to make sure that the root tips are pointing downward so that they can continue to grow down versus growing out of the cup. I mean, if they later grow out of the cup by themselves, then let it be. But otherwise, ideally, you want to train the roots to grow down and position them in a downward position. So this is what they look like after the repot. The media mixture is not wet, it's dry. I purposely keep them dry because I normally like to keep newly repotted orchid dry for 1 week, and this 1 week will allow damaged roots, if any, to have time to scab over, because if you introduce water too quickly and if you don't control the amount well enough, that it may potentially rot the roots. So I want to make sure that this orchid is gradually have that opportunity to gradually get used to the new medium, the new cup, and new amount of media. And here is the third batch, not the second, the third batch. Yellow Pixie, the 5th and 6th. They were the last 2 that I acquired, also from a grocery store. Even though I purchased these orchids on separate occasions, in fact, my first 2, I bought them back when I was living in New York, but they all have very similar, if not the same media mixture and the same cup. I suspect that they're all from the same grower or the same source, import source. Anyway, I soaked them, so it's easier for me to remove the bark chips and moss from the cup, the roots, and also like as you can see here, there are so many area roots. they're taking a lot of space, and I was so afraid that I would damage them, so I decided that it's time for me to repot them. The season was right, the temperature was right, they're in active growth because of the green root tips, they're growing new leaves, and they're out of bloom, so it was a perfect time for me to repot them. I mean, as much as I love seeing aerial roots, sometimes I think they get a little too much, and I really have to make sure that they still have a purpose versus just hanging out. For these two, I'm still going to use the same type of container, 16-ounce transparent cup with ventilation holes on the sides and drainage holes at the bottom. And this is what they look like after they were positioned into the new cup. They were under a ceiling fan, just hanging out, so that there is a chance for them to kind of dry out the water between leaves. This is what they look like after I put the media mixture in. They looked really good. One of them even still had a spike going. Typically they keep their spike for another bloom season. After the second bloom, then the spike will die back. And typically as the spike die back, that's also when these orchids will put out new spikes as well. So far, Yellow Pixie has been rather hardy. I don't find them to be finicky at all. They're not fuzzy. They get quarter cup of water every time, and in terms of fertilizer, it's quarter strength. And here I'm also going to use double cup method, and because there's drainage hole at the bottom, if I decide to let some water hang out there, it would go back to semi-hydro, but if I don't, then it's traditional setup. The outer cup, blue cup, is just to reduce algae forming, but the cup in the middle, the second transparent cup, that's not necessary. You don't have to. You can just use the inner cup plus the blue cup. I just have extra ones, so I decided to use them just to go a little extra fancy, but totally not necessary. With the repots, I have high hope for these orchids. Hopefully they'll continue to establish their roots and give me more blooms in its next bloom cycle, in their next bloom cycle. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!